Hi and welcome to Knitting on the Float. My name is Tracy and I'm your host. I am coming to you from a very sunny day in the Vancouver area, but it is cold. This morning I saw that little negative up there. So we are hitting -degrees Celsius. We are supposed to get snow this weekend. I wasn't quite expecting this kind of weather in February on the West Coast. Toronto area, absolutely. Vancouver area, not so much. Anyway, the great thing about when we have this chilly weather is it's a wonderful reason to hunker down, drink warm beverages, and work away on crafts. And this week, I've been doing just a little bit of that. So I'm excited to share that with you. But before I do, let me tell you where you can find me. I am Tracy RR on Ravelry, and I am at Knitting on the Float on Instagram. If you're new to the podcast, this is a podcast where I primarily talk about knitting. This week it is mainly knitting, though there is one little project from way back when that is not. So I'm excited to share that. So welcome, and I hope you enjoy the podcast today. And if you are a returning viewer, welcome back. I hope that you have your cup of whatever it is that you are drinking, a cup of kindness, whether it is warm, whether it is cold, and that you are ready with your favorite project to just sit down and have a little visit while I chatter away about the projects that are to my right. But before we do that, it is time for tea time. And today I am drinking out of my Yeti mug, and this was a mug that my sister gave me a couple of years ago for Christmas, and today I chose it because I thought I needed to keep my beverage warm. So I do have a plastic lid that will go on it after I have done cheers, but for now it is uncovered and cooling down a little bit, because when it's in a stainless steel cup it does tend to get a little hot. Today I'm drinking something a little bit different. I am drinking Violet Cream, which is a bird and blend tea that I picked up when I went to England this past November, December. And this one is Sri Lankan black tea, cocoa nibs, mallow flowers, and flavoring. It's got medium caffeine in it. And the description is dark chocolate covered violets with vanilla notes. So, and I might as well share with you what is inside. So this is the loose tea in here. And the other thing, I haven't had loose tea in a while, but I wanted to share with you one of my favorite things that I have when I do drink loose tea. And that is my Finum strainer. And I originally bought this at a place called the Tea Emporium, which was a little tea shop in the Toronto area. I don't think if they do exist, perhaps they're online, but I always like these ones because this mesh is so fine. It's fabulous for teas like rooibos or other very fine teas that with a regular metal strainer go through. This catches it all. So this is fabulous with my lemon zest rooibos and any other teas that I just don't want in my cup. I want them in the strainer. And then it comes with a little bottom thing to collect that, or when you put it in your teacup, you can put the lid on top to keep the warmth in there. So I always like these ones, and right there it just says finum.com. And I'm not sure where, like I said, I've had these for a very long time. I bought them at the Tea Emporium, perhaps Amazon, but these ones are my absolute favorite. And I don't know whether it's a plastic mesh or a very fine metal. I think it might be it's got a little bit of a glow to it. So I'm not sure what the mesh is made of, but very, very fine. Anyway, enough about straining tea. It's time to drink tea. And I think old favorite here, not so much an old favorite because it's the first time I'm trying this one, but bird and blend teas and loose teas are old favorites. And today I've got a few old favorites to share with you too. So let us cheer to old favorites. Cheers to that. I have now put the lid on my cup, so now it's a sippy cup, but that will keep my tea nice and warm, especially when it is time to edit. So I'm looking forward to revisiting with my violet cream tea in a little bit. But now it is time to chatter away about the projects that I have been working on this week. And one of the projects that I've been working on has been upping my circular sock machine game. I have an Erlbacher Speedster. I've had it for quite a while, I think since 2018. And I have been working on cranking socks. So I'm slowly getting better, and I hope a little bit faster. It usually takes me about 45 minutes to do one sock, and I'm doing fairly well with the hung hems. I'm getting better at the heels. Having the heel weights are a game changer, and let me just, I shared these a little bit back. I have 3 of these heel weights, and they are very sharp, so I do have to be careful when I grab them. I'll put them in front of me rather than reaching onto the sock machine table. So the heel weights, game changer, and the table that goes with the Speedster totally makes making these socks so much easier, faster, less stressful. Where previously I had had my machine on a stationary table, it was very low to the ground. It was very frustrating. I'd be bending over trying to crank socks. The investment in the table was most worth it, as was getting those heel weights. So my hung hems are looking good. And now that I have those heel weights, my heels are so much easier to crank, and I had been threading my machine wrong there for a little bit too. So now that I'm threading it properly and the heel brake engages properly, that makes things a little easier too. But definitely the weights are keeping my stitches on the needles. But look at that beautiful heel. And a toe is just like a heel. I have also been getting my toes done too. So it is really nice to be able to crank a full sock. And this is Yorkshire Skies colorway. This is a yarn by Lorna's Laces. I think it was a specialty yarn for, I had purchased it to do a mystery shawl knit along, and I decided I didn't want to do the shawl, so I had 2 skeins of this, and I decided that socks would be in order. So I have made 1 pair of a nice height sock, and of course those heels and the toes are now done. These are going to be a gift, and I am using some of my leftover yarn to make some shorty socks. So I have a small little hung hem. I've done the heel here, and just to show you what the toe, so here is another heel, but this is going to turn into a toe. I have my waist yarn here. What I find easiest, and I know there's tutorials on YouTube because there's everything on YouTube. I'm on YouTube. Anyway, I know you should sew it, but I was finding I was missing stitches, and I was getting really frustrated with picking up the stitches and worried that I might miss one. That what I now do is I actually pop my stitches back on a set of circulars, and then I just do the Kitchener stitch across. And the difference between, and I think I've mentioned this before, the difference between a regular sock that you would, I'm sort of cheating by popping ahead, but I'll just sort of show the toe. A regular sock that you would take off your needles where you are Kitchenering or grafting right here. Instead, that's already been done for you. You are grafting just over top of where the toes sort of have their little hinges or their little toe knuckles. What do you call those? Whatever toe knuckles are. That's where the line would go, just like a commercial pair of socks. Anyway, these ones I am going to put in place. Now, I did buy 2 skeins of this yarn, so I had a little bit left. So this skein here was a 100-gram skein. It made these 2, this shorty, and I had a little bit left over, but I do have a second skein, so I will be making another shorty and then probably 2 more full-size socks. I haven't figured out who those ones will be for, but I do know this pair, once these are done, these are a gift, and these are as well. So, sock machine got some love, and we'll be getting some more love in the days ahead. And I will pop that project back there for the end today of my favorite things because it's an exciting one. Okay, oh, I could have shown these socks too. And I will show these socks now. This is a project that I've been working on since the summer, and these are just vanilla socks. I've been playing around with just different heels, toes, heel flaps, things like that. And this is in my, I call it my Holiday Road bag. And this summer when we took our holidays, my son Isaac was working in Florida, so we drove from Vancouver to Florida. Then we went up to Toronto and then came back to Vancouver. So that was this big, huge triangle, and I got a lot of knitting done, and I actually worked on socks quite a bit. So the yarn that I'm using for this pair of socks is Scrumptious Pearl, and this is the Birdie Bot colorway. It's got sparkle in it. I'm hoping that the sparkle is catching. The Scrumptious Pearl's Glam sock base is so, so sparkly. I finished this sock quite a while back, and again, this one was grafted at the top. And I have slowly been working away on the second sock. So a couple of weeks ago, I pulled this out of hibernation, and I finished off the Eye of Partridge heel flap that I had decided to put in these ones. And this one has a kerchief heel, and then I have been working slowly on the foot. These are nice matched socks, so I have just a little bit to go, four more stripe colors, I guess, and then I will be finishing off this sock with a barn toe. The other thing that has popped in here is my hand cream, because I've been finding it's winter, my hands are super dry. Anyway, that got a little tiny bit of love this week. Not a lot, but enough to feel like these will be coming off the needles very, very soon. Perhaps by the weekend, we shall see. Maybe I'll have these to share on the podcast next week. Anyway, Holiday Road. Now that I'm back from holidays, I need to finish these socks, so that feels good to be very, very close. I wanted to share one more thing about the circular sock machine. One thing I've been doing is I've got a lovely little notebook from Jules of So Sweet Violet, Sweet Notes, and what I've been doing is I have been putting in notes on socks, so the foot length, the circumference, the length, the ankle measurement, and then I've been just writing down what I've done for a sock sample. So for example, this pair here. This has 60 rounds here, and then I have done actually 55 rounds in the foot. And I just write down the type of sock yarn I've used. And I'm just hoping, I've kept the first few pages. This one's for me, it is blank. That means that I have not hand cranked myself a pair of socks yet. I will need to do that. And so I planned the first 4 pages to put myself, Greg, Isaac, and Nathaniel, and make us some hand-cranked socks, especially the boys. Anyway, that's something I had popped on the couch to share with you and almost forgot. The big project that I've spent most of my time on this week is living in my gorgeous bag from my sister-in-law. This is my bunny bag. This was sent to me a few years ago, and it is great for holding fantastically big projects, and this is a fantastically big project. And I hope that I won't be working on it too much longer. I'm making good progress, but I want to be able to wear this before winter is over. And with this cold snap that we're having, winter is definitely not over. The yarn that I am using is this gorgeous Nora George yarns. This is Cloud Decay. It is alpaca, silk, and cashmere. So 70% alpaca, 20% silk, 10% cashmere, and it is just the softest yarn. And this is the Sweet Pea colorway. It's got gorgeous pinks and purples, little specks of blue in there. And oh, just so gorgeous to work with. And I have been working on Andy Satterlund's Morticia Sweater, and unfortunately Andy has taken her shop down, so she's no longer selling her patterns. I had seen a post on Instagram just before the new year saying that she was shutting down the shop, so I did purchase a few of her patterns because I really like working on her designs. And I've had this one in my library for quite some time, so if you have any of her patterns in your library, you are very lucky because her patterns are wonderful to knit up. So this is Morticia, and the back is done. The front section is done. I have joined up under the sleeves, and I'm now I've also done the waist decreases along the side, and I'm now just knitting in the round for a little while, increasing my length, and hopefully I won't have this on this set of needles much longer. I've still got quite a bit to go. I've got to do just the straightaway through the waist and into the hips, then there's some hip increases, and then the ribbing and then bind off for this part. And then the sleeves, once they go on, they are these gorgeous mesh balloon type sleeves. And I am so excited to share my progress over the coming weeks on this. And I'm definitely going to be very excited once this is off the needles and I'll be able to wear it. I am alternating my skeins right now. And just look at those gorgeous little shots of colors, a little bit of red in there that comes out as a surprise. There's a little bit of, sometimes there's little shots of like a dark purpley brown almost, just where the dyes have interacted. So I am currently alternating skeins using the, I don't know if it's helical or helical, I think like helical, but helix. So I don't know if it's helical or helical, but I think I usually say helical knitting, and maybe it's helical knitting, I don't know. Anyway, I am doing that, and that's where you knit along 3 stitches before your next yarn. You drop the yarn you're working with, slip 3 stitches, pick up the yarn that you are planning to work with next, and you go around until you get to 3 stitches before this one. So you're just alternating the balls of yarn. I am thinking once I am done with alternating these two, so I think this one will run out first, I will start alternating one of the full skeins with this one, and then I'm just going to, I think, keep going with one. And I'm hoping that each of my sleeves only takes 1 ball, because I do not want to alternate during my sleeves, mainly because of the mesh, and I think it would be very complicated to have to do the alternating with the mesh, and I would not be able to do a nice job with the helical knitting. I would have to just have a line from where I drop it each time. So I'm hoping that each of my skeins, which has 225 meters on each skein, that I have enough to do sleeve 1, sleeve 2. And I started off with, I thought I had another skein. I do. I have 2 skeins sitting beside me. So I started off with 6 skeins. I am still just working on the first 2. Again, I'm hoping sleeve 1 and 2 can be done with this. I'll be introducing one of these in soon as well. For the most part, they are blending really, really nicely. Anyway, that is my Morticia. It has gotten most of my knitting time this week, and that's because I really would love to have it done before winter is over. Anyway, that is a very exciting project that I am looking forward to sharing more about in the weeks ahead. Now I have 2 more things on the couch to share with you, and both of them have been finished for a little bit of time. When I went back to Toronto at the end of January into February with Nathaniel, my mom asked me if I wanted this. I don't even remember doing this cross stitch. However, I do know it's mine because it has my initials and the year I finished it. So this was something I did in 2002, because in the early 2000s, late 90s, I was very, very heavily engrossed in cross stitch. I loved doing cross stitch. And this would have been something that I would have done just after Isaac was born, but I think I made it for one of my sisters. My mom framed it and asked if I wanted to have it, and I thought, oh, this would be perfect for Isaac's room. Go away, yeah. And so I brought it home with me. I put up a command strip on his door. I bought this beautiful ribbon when I was in England from Marks and Spencer. It was just a Christmas ribbon. And I got the tape gun out and taped this on. Put this on the command strip, hung it on Isaac's door, and when he got home, I wasn't sure whether he was going to be annoyed that I had put this on his door. He was thrilled, and I've actually been meaning to share this with you for a little bit, so he loves it. So I've popped it off his door right now because I definitely wanted to share it, but it really, to me, stressed the importance of signing your work, because if I came across this, I wouldn't have remembered that I had done this. It is so cute though. Mainly because I don't enjoy working with Aida cloth. I love working with linen, and so working with Aida cloth was something I very rarely did unless it was a kit, and this must have been a kit. But yeah, I just don't remember doing this at all, but I am so, so glad I did, because it is fun, and it's definitely a fun embellishment on Isaac's door. The next project that I'm going to share with you has been off my needles for a tiny bit, but I had worked on this I started this, I think, back in late summer or maybe even early summer of 2022. This is what had been living in my Nancy Drew bag. And if you've been watching the podcast for a while, you know I always love using my Nancy Drew bag. It usually means there is a mystery afoot. It is a secret test knit, and usually I can't share too much about the test knits. And if you get a peek inside my bag, you are very, very lucky. So we do get to peek inside my bag, and in here there is a Viola yarn tag, sock yarn, colorway dapple. It's always good that I keep these, otherwise I might not forget just because I did put it on my Ravelry page, but it is nice to keep the ball bands, and then I usually discard them once I've shared them. I do have a So Sweet Violet lavender pouch in my Nancy Drew bag. In here, she has all of her glasses because she needs them to see all the little clues. And here is that gorgeous skein of Viola Sock in the colorway Dapple. And this colorway, I don't love knitting with yellow. Usually I get a little bit stir crazy when I knit with yellow. This one was kind of fun because there were little pops of pink throughout, little highlights that you just, there's a little speckle of pink, kind of unexpected. But like the sun dapple, like we're getting today, this yarn was very lovely to work with. And what did I knit? I test knit a pattern for Danielle George, who is Little Bobbins on Instagram, on Ravelry, on her podcast. And Danny makes the most wonderful things, whether it is her bags, whether it is her designs. Danny's makes are always just so lovely. And I had the pleasure of test knitting these socks. They are called the Sentimental Socks. So here is a sock on a blocker that I'm about to hit my head with. So that is the side view, but here is the front view. It's been on the blocker for a little bit, so it's got some creases in it, but it has this beautiful patterning down the leg, across the instep, down the foot. And this is a 2x2 rib. On the back it is stockinette, but we've got this beautiful lace detail and just such a beautiful design on the front. Now Danny designed this pattern based on a photograph she had of herself as a small child wearing a sweater her mother had knit for her. And so her sentimental socks have a lot of sentimental thoughts for her. Now, when I went to England, I was able to meet up with Danny and her mother and a few other wonderful knitters, and I got to see Danny's sentimental socks in person, as well as her Christmas Eve cast on pattern as well. So that was nice to see Danny's makes and have them in hand, and she always chooses the most lovely, lovely colors. Anyway, as I mentioned, there is this beautiful patterning detail. It is a slip stitch heel into my favorite type of heel, that is the square heel turn, and lovely gusset. And that is the difference between the circular sock machine socks. This is 64 stitches, this is 64 stitches, but these will always fit better because you've got that beautiful gusset there, giving you that little bit more room over the instep. These ones, you just have to stretch them out, and they're wonderful. They're great for gifts. They're a lot faster to make, but my fully hand knit socks always have just that better fit. Just, you know, just that little bit extra. And then down the foot into a barn toe. So always exciting to be able to share one of Danny's patterns on the podcast, especially when it's been hiding in Nancy Drew for so long. And poor Nancy, though, she's going to be sad because she's going to be going into the drawer for a little bit. I do have one other test knit on my needles right now, but it will not fit in Nancy Drew. So Danny just needs to design some more sock patterns soon so that Nancy can come out to play. Hint, hint, Danny. Anyway, these are the beautiful sentimental socks, and if you have a chance to ever knit one of Danny's sock patterns, I highly recommend. Her patterns are really well written. They fit just beautifully, and they're always just such lovely designs. Anyway, that is what I have to share on my favorite things. It's a little bit more than I thought I had earlier. I was so happy when I did see that these were released because I thought, oh good, I have something more to talk about. And of course, an oldie but a goodie. Had to think what that is. That is the crock pot. Greg is making something just over on the kitchen counter for supper tonight. So anyway, I'm not telling you to go away. We don't have brown paper packages, but I do have bits and bobs. But first, I need a sip of tea. It's now time for Bits and Bobs, and this is my segment where I talk about anything and everything not necessarily knitting related. As I mentioned, no brown paper packages, though I am expecting a wonderful parcel to be delivered any day now. So I'm hoping for next week I will have this wonderful parcel to share with you. It's just a top up from one of my favorite makers, and when you receive a parcel from this maker, oh, it's just so lovely to sit down with a cup of tea and open this parcel. But I will save that for hopefully, crossing fingers, next week. So hopefully I'll have it by then. Just as I mentioned, to top up for some future projects, and actually for one that I am working on right now. So what does that leave? That leaves stuff that's been going on around the float home. The past couple of days, it has been super cold. It has been very, very windy. This morning, it was so windy, I was sure that we were going to capture all the wind sounds on the podcast today, but it does seem to have died down considerably. Every once in a while, you'll hear like a pop sound. That's actually the fan in the stove. It connects to outside, and I guess the wind sometimes hits it and makes a little pop sound, something you get used to, I guess, when you live here. Last night, I don't know, usually I don't feel the house. Last night I was feeling it, and I said to Greg, I don't know, I think I might need some gravel. I was feeling a little bit off. Telephone, and I will be back in a moment. That was Isaac letting me know he is going to be home very shortly, so let's see if I can finish off Bits and Bobs before he walks in the door. It has been fairly quiet down on the river. There was a very large tugboat pulling a digger yesterday, and I've got that on video, and I'll tell you just a little bit about that before I share the video. So we are on the Fraser River, and especially in the spring, we get a lot of silt that deposits on the riverbed coming down with the spring runoff. And every once in a while, especially if you've tuned in and you've seen me showing footage with the tugboats pulling logs, there are lots of logs across the way. So I think a lot of debris falls on the riverbed under the logs. So they do dredging of the river quite a few times during the year just across the way. So every once in a while you'll see them bring down the digger And right now, what will be happening over the next few days is the big tugboat will be collecting the barges filled with the sludge or the silts or whatever you want to call it off of the riverbed and bringing it back up the river. And then I'm not sure how they dispose of it, but I think because it's so windy out today, I haven't seen any of them going back up the river. It is super windy and not quite white caps on the river, but pretty close. Anyway, so that will be happening over the next few days. I think they do it about 3 times a year where they dredge the areas with the logs. The houses the marina that we live in, we've got our little grouping of houses. We have to dredge also every few years just because the silt deposits, and they actually move our homes so they can get in and dig out the dirt. It's a whole procedure, and so we are looking at figuring out when our next dredge will be, and it's a very, very expensive process, but it will be interesting to get some footage of that when that does happen. Anyway, I am trying to think if there's anything else to share on Bits and Bobs. It's been a quiet crafting week here, and I don't think I've got too much else to share. So dredging happening. Oh, and I'll pop that video right here for you as well. Just looked out and saw that one of the sea imps here is pulling this crane. They've just gone through the bridge, and they will be doing some dredging across the river in the areas where the logs are kept. So just sort of zooming out so I can capture it all passing the house. But these tall, I don't know if they're pilings, posts on either side, they go up and down, and they will go down probably in a few moments because they've got to go under a hydro wire. But huge crane being pulled by the Sea Imp 9. Good thing I know my Roman numerals. And yeah, just going by the house right now. I have to tell you, it is cold on the float today. When I woke up this morning, it was 0 degrees. It is windy and very, very chilly. I would not want to be outside having to do any dredging. And there's a guy standing just outside the crane right there, taking in the cold water. He's waving. Anyway, there we go. And it is going to, oh, so cold. It's just going to go a little farther, and we'll see if these go up or down those big posts, just because they are going to be going underneath some wires. Anyway, there is the Fraser River Pile and Dredge, and they are on their way to do lots of dredging. So that'll be happening over the next few days, and they'll be bringing barges filled with lots and lots of sludge. If you can hear that squeaking, those poles are starting to come down so that you can see the one is much lower than the other, or starting to get a little lower than the other one, because they are going to go underneath the hydro wires. And what those poles do is they actually push down into the ground in the river so that it keeps them moored in place. So functional. Anyway, that is what is happening on the river this Wednesday, February 22nd. And they are clearing those hydro lines. As for the rest of the week, it was a fairly quiet week, and I got a lot of crafting done, especially on my Morticia. I'm hoping that the next week ahead I also get some crafting done on my Morticia, and also get a little bit more cranking done on my socks. I do have a 72 stitch cylinder that I'm hoping to make some wider socks with, but right now I'm just trying to do some of the more narrow ones, and then once I put the 72 stitch on, I'll be making some socks for Isaac and Greg. Nathaniel and I are pretty good still with the 64 stitch, but he's getting big, so Nathaniel will soon be, I think, in the 72 stitch, that wide foot as well, so definitely worth the investment to buy the wider cylinder so I can make socks for my family. Anyway, I think that is all I have for Bits and Bobs today. Again, it's been a fairly quiet week, but that means lots of crafting time. Thank you so much for joining me on Knitting on the Float this week. I hope that you have had a chance to work away on your project of choice and enjoy a lovely libation while I have chattered away about the things that I have worked on, not only recently, but also in the past. I am looking forward to visiting with you next week, but in the meantime, I am wishing you the most wonderful, wonderful week ahead, and I look forward to seeing you next week on Knitting on the Float. Bye. I have to show you my favorite part of doing toes on the circular sock machine. So I have popped my stitches on the needles, and my favorite part, it's just so satisfying, I don't know why, is grabbing this end and just pulling these stitches off. No cares in the world, because I know at the very end, when I've pulled all my waste yarn off, which is, by the way, called Big Bird, that my stitches are now ready to be grafted, and then I will have a lovely little sock. But in the meantime, no waste yarn.